You do all four sports. So baseball's 162. You got 80 plus in hockey, 80 plus in basketball. But the NFL regular season is 17. It means that each game in the NFL has that much greater importance, value to the team. Do you sense that? Is football, when you do a football game, does it feel more important to you?
Well, it does feel like it's only one of 17. So, I don't want to say one sport feels more important to me as a broadcaster because
I understand.
But no, football, when they're getting set to kick off at 1:00 on a Sunday, it feels big. That millions of people are watching, how important the game is to both teams and their fans. I'll give you a perfect example. We had the Titans Raiders game 2 days ago. It is Tuesday, I think.
It is still.
We had the Titans Raiders on Sunday. Both teams made the playoffs last year. They both started the season 0-2. And we put up a graphic in the fourth quarter. Titans were winning the game and they held on and won by 2. 0-2 teams since 1990 have a 25% chance of making the playoffs. 1-2 teams. So for the winner of that game, 1-2 teams have a 25% chance. 0-3 teams, it was 2.5%.
Wow.
So that game was huge. Now it's a little different. Now you have the one extra playoff team in each conference, so the percentages will be skewed a bit. But the difference between 1-2 and 0-3 is huge, and every game is big. From a preparation standpoint, we might do a game in week 15 involving 2 teams we haven't seen all season because these are all national broadcasts. They're not local team broadcasts. So the preparation is probably 30 to 40 hours a week for the broadcasters, certainly not nearly as much for the other sports, hockey, basketball, baseball, because the teams play so frequently. We usually go in on a Friday and go to practice with the home team and sit down with some players and coaches afterwards. And we do the same thing with the visiting team when they get in on Saturday. So it certainly does have a big feel from week to week.
You get a sense with Las Vegas that, Josh McDaniels been through this being a head coach before, and, he's now out from under Belichick's shadow again. How much pressure he's on with the Raiders?
Well, we spoke to him the other day, and I had read a lot of articles about many of the adjustments he made in Denver when he was head coach for those 2 years. He felt like he tried to do it all. Wanted to be involved in player personnel and run the draft and coach the team and call the plays. And he really learned a lot from that experience. So he's leaving a lot of it up to his coordinators and the player personnel department and the general manager. They go back 30 years to their college days. So it's been a process. He was 32 when he was hired by Denver. He's 46 now. Went back and was an offensive coordinator in St. Louis for a year with the Rams. So put in 1 year under his belt without Belichick, then went back to New England, won some more rings. So he's certainly a great football mind. His father was a legendary coach in Ohio, but they're off to a tough start. Week 2, they had a 20-0 lead at halftime. That crazy game with Arizona.
Right.
Turned into the biggest blown lead in Raiders history. They lose on the fumble in overtime. And then this week, slow start to the game. Tennessee scored touchdowns on the first 3 possessions. Raiders came back, had an opportunity to tie the game on a failed 2-point conversion. And the schedule doesn't get any easier. They have Denver and Kansas City these next 2 weeks. So apparently there was a meeting I read somewhere with the owner, Mark Davis, after the game. And there were some high expectations in Vegas this year coming off a run to the playoffs last year. So hopefully for Josh McDaniels and his staff, they can turn it around, but certainly have dug themselves a hole now at 0-3.
At the other end of the standings, you got 2 unbeaten teams, Dolphins and the Eagles. It's rather shocking, I think, after 3 weeks, you only have 2. But nonetheless, I think if you'd said to somebody at the beginning of the year, there will only be 2, probably very few, if any, would have said it'll be Philadelphia and Miami. Which of these 2 has been more surprising for you?
That's a good question. I probably have to go with Miami. When you look at the fact that it's a rookie head coach, the teams that they've beaten. I don't know if anybody would have expected a 6-touchdown game from Tua last week. So I haven't seen any of their games in person, the Dolphins or the Eagles. I've read about them. I've seen highlights, but I probably have to go with the Dolphins as a little bit more surprising.
Well, when you think about too, how, I mean, while you were in Nashville, you probably went to Tootsie's the night before first.
Walk by Tootsie's. Went to Jack's Barbecue, which Barry Trotz was the first person to take me there about 20 years ago.
Oh, really?
So
Right down the block from Tootsie's.
but I'll tell you, like the Bills dominated. The Bills dominated everything. I mean, I think the time of possession was 41-18. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then they had the Tagliaviola controversy about coming back from a concussion issue. And I mean, Miami won the game, but they won Buffalo won everything else. The other team, and you did their game, and maybe it's because they were the topic of Hard Knocks this year, but I really enjoyed what Dan Campbell's doing in Detroit. And you did their game, I think, a couple of weeks ago, Kenny. And Dan Campbell appears to be one of the fascinating new characters in the National Football League.
He sure is. And before I get to Dan Campbell, let me get back to that Dolphins-Bills game for a minute. You have hockey connections to both teams, right? Chris Greer, general manager in Miami with the Dolphins. Mike Greer's brother, their dad, Bobby Greer, was in football for a long, long time. And I don't know if you knew this, but Sean McDermott, the Bills head coach, his brother used to sell tickets for the Capitals.
Is that right?
Oh, no kidding.
He had some hockey connections on both sides. Dan Campbell, I watched Hard Knocks, all 5 leading up to the game last week. It's a quality coaching staff. There are a number of ex-players that he's brought in. And I think that's been a key part of what they've been able to build with the culture there. I know they had a tough loss after.
Well, he admitted he made a mistake, right? He admitted he made a mistake. He should have gone for the fourth down gamble and tried to kick a 54-yard field goal. And then the Vikings went down and scored off the field goal. So
is that what he said? Yeah. And
yeah.
I love Kevin O'Connell, the new Vikings coach. He did some broadcasting and was part of an NFL broadcast boot camp that I was involved in years ago. So he has a bright future ahead. But yeah, Dan Campbell, he actually played with my partner, Jonathan Vilma, in New Orleans. So they've known each other. Campbell was a Bill Parcells disciple, played in Miami when Bill was in the front office, and then went to New Orleans as a coach, learned under Sean Payton. So he's had some great experiences, some terrific mentors in Bill Parcells, Sean Payton, and some others. And yeah, the Hard Knocks was it was a fun watch. We had their game last week. They took a big lead over the Washington Commanders in the first half, and then Washington came back in the second half, but couldn't pull it out. But I'll tell you what, it was loud in Ford Field last week. It was a great atmosphere. I've done a lot of games there through the years, many of them during the down years of the Lions where they didn't have a lot of success, but it was fun in that building. The fans were disappointed by the loss to the Eagles the week before. Week 1, they had sold out the game. And then the week 2 game that I worked against Washington, it was a terrific atmosphere. So hoping that Dan Campbell and his club have some success just in case we get back there later in the season. We'll actually see them in New England in 2 weeks. We have the Lions-Patriots game.